DAX filter functions are like the secret sauce of Power BI. They enable us to manipulate data, control visuals, and create dynamic reports. They are the key to making your reports not just informative but truly insightful. Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn at Cloud Analytics. I'm Sailaja and today we have an exciting topic to explore in the world of Power BI DAX filter functions. So in the world of DAX filter functions, Calculate is kind of a superstar. It's like the magician that makes everything possible. So let's dive into Calculate. So before we try to understand what are Calculate functions and when do we actually use these functions in our reporting perspective, let's first understand what are these filter functions in Power BI DAX and why is it quite important for us to learn these functions for enabling us to make informative decisions through our reporting. So filter functions are used to extract the required values. Like for example, if we would like to calculate the percent of total or the absolute change growth or the growth percentage, so we normally use these kind of a filter functions. So these functions are mainly based out of a filter context, which means that most of the functions would execute at the visualization level. So therefore we create measures instead of a calculated columns because measures have the filter context by default. So now that we understood the basics of the filter functions, let's understand and see what are the different types of filter functions that are available within Power BI DAX. So let me go back to the filter functions page on Power BI. So as you could see here, there are several functions that have been listed on this documentation. So we've got the all function and there are different types of all functions as well, like all selected, all except and all cross filtered and so on and so forth. And then we also have calculate, calculate table, earlier, filter, index, keep filters, lookup value, and then several other functions. So this particular series that I would be focusing on for the next couple of days would mainly help you to understand the important filter functions that are available in Power BI DAX and how we can leverage these functions to enable us to make a complex logic created within our Power BI report. So with that said, on the context of these filter functions, let's quickly go back to the calculate function and understand how these expressions can be created and when in a situation can I really use this particular function. So as you could see here on my screen, the syntax is calculate of expression, comma, filter 1, comma, filter 2 and so on and so forth. So as you could see, the first value that we would need to insert within the calculate expression is the expression value. Now this expression needs to be an aggregated value and this is a mandatory condition for this particular syntax. So the expression should always be an aggregated value. So what is an aggregated value? So let's say if I'm trying to calculate the total sales value on a specific condition, then my expression would be the total sales as a measure value. So that would be my first expression that I need to insert within this function, followed by some conditions. So these could be some Boolean expressions or based on some conditions where I would need to specify to that particular logic. So let's say if I'm interested to calculate the total sales for a specific region, like for East region, what is my total sales value? So in that situation, I can use this function, right? Calculate of total sales, comma, region is equal to East. That's it. So this expression would help me to evaluate the total sales value for the respective condition, which is my filter condition or my filter expression, which is for the particular region East value. Right, now let's delve into the computation, or let's see with some scenarios by writing some expressions within my data set. So I've already connected to the Superstore data set. And in case if you're the new user following on my channel, I have all my data sets and some important documentation published on my GitHub page. So I can leave the description, I can leave the link to the GitHub page, on the description page, and if you're interested, please follow along so that it would be helpful for you to understand these concepts in detail. Right, so I have connected to my orders table, which has the a different categorical information along with some aggregated values, as you could see here. So what I would like to do here is, firstly I would like to calculate, like in my previous explanation, I would like to evaluate my total sales value for the respective region East. So let's calculate this. So in order to do that, first I would like to compute the total sales value, right? So how do I calculate it? So I'll go to the orders table. Let me quickly zoom in. Yeah, so I'm going to my respective table orders, and next to that I have a 3 dots option. So I'll click on these 3 dots and then I'll select new measure. Okay, let me break this explanation in a much simpler manner so that it is easier for you to understand. So what does it say? It computes the input expression based on its filters. So what is it going to do? Based on the expression, based on the input filters that we apply within this expression, the expression has been calculated. Okay, so it overrides the current filter context if we have filters in calculate. And filter context means at which level we are comparing the values. So let's see with an example here. So let's assume that I would like to calculate the total sales value for a specific region East. Now how do I need to calculate this? So before that, let me calculate the total sales value. Okay, so total sales is, how is my total sales expression computed? Based on the aggregation sum of sales. That's it. So I close the parenthesis and hit on enter. Now I have my new measure being created. Let me bring into a visual. So I'll add my region, and I'll also bring this new measure that we have created, total sales. And for our simplicity to understand, let me convert the chart type from bar chart to a table visual. And okay, so now let me try to increase the font size of these values. So I'll keep it somewhere, okay, 20. Yeah, and let me also increase my column headers value. So I'll add 20. Alright, so I have my region and my total sales value. Now my condition here is that I would like to compute the total sales for the region East. So for that, I'll create another measure and call this as East sales is equal to. So since I would like to calculate the total sales for my region East value, we are going to use the filter function calculate. So what am I trying to calculate? The total sales. So that would become my expression here. So I would say total sales, comma, and what is my condition that I need to evaluate? Based on my region. So what is that? So when region is equal to East, right? So let me explain you this particular expression here. So what are we trying to calculate in this function? So we are trying to calculate what is my total sales for the specific region East value, right? So in order to compute this logic, we are using the calculate filter function. Now the syntax for the calculate is, the first value should be an aggregated expression. So therefore I have used the total sales as my aggregated value, followed by my filter condition, which is based on my region East, I would like to compute total sales. Okay, so in other words, if you need to understand how these values have to be inserted, I'll give you a small trick here. So the first value is nothing but what are you going to achieve, or what is that you are going to compute. So that would need to be inserted in the first expression value. So what am I going to calculate here? total sales, and therefore I've inserted total sales measure value in my first expression, comma. The next part would be where. Where is like, okay, where should I calculate my total sales value? So where do I need to calculate? For my specific region, east. Therefore that becomes in my second portion of my calculation. So the first portion would be the when section, like what is that we are going to calculate, and the second section would be my where section, where how this condition has to be evaluated. Now let me hit on apply, and I'll try to add this east sales onto my report. Alright, now if you notice, my total sales for east region is 6.78 million. Now the same value has now been listed across all my regions in this particular table, right? So here, as you could see, I'm able to calculate the total sales, because what did I create my logic? So for my east sales expression, we mentioned that I'm interested to calculate the total sales value for the particular region east. And earlier, like I said, filter context is actually computed at the visualization level, and this particular calculate function would override the current filter context if we have any filters in the calculate, right? So what is that it is going to override? So it has overwritten the filter context for the respective other regions, and therefore for all the regions it is just showing us the same east sales value for regardless of whatever the region value is listed in there. Because if I have not mentioned specifically this condition in my calculate function as east region is equal to east, then it would retain its own filter context at the visual level, which is by default by west, east, central and south value, and it might provide me the actual sales value corresponding to those region values. But in my expression, I just mentioned that I am just interested to focus on my region east sales, and therefore it has, the calculate function has overridden the existing filter context values with this particular condition, and therefore for all the respective regions it has displayed the same value regardless of whichever region it is. Got it? So this is one simple example on using a calculate function within your reporting requirements. Alright, so basically calculate functions in this scenario, I would rather use that to compute the total sales for that particular region rather than displaying it in my specific visual like this, right? Because it doesn't make sense for me to display the east value across other regions as well, which is irrelevant, right? So how do I need to tackle this particular situation? This we are going to handle this when we talk about the filter functions, which is another type of a filter functions in DAX, right? So then we will understand how are we going to restrict that kind of a overridden of the computation. So let's do another example for the calculate function. So now I would like to calculate, let's say I'm interested to calculate the growth and the growth percentage for all the years. So for that, let me bring in some basic values. So I'll bring in my order date and I'll just keep my year value on my report. And let me quickly select this visual and format. Okay, so we have my year values spread across all the 4 years, and I would like to bring in my total sales. And let's change this visual type to a normal table format. Okay, so what am I going to do here is, let me expand it. So let's compute the growth and the growth percentage. Now what is growth, or how can we calculate the growth value? So growth value is nothing but let me increase the font. So let me write the formula here. So growth is computed based on current value minus required value. So this is the formula for calculating the growth, or this can also be called as variance. So variance or growth is calculated based on current value minus required value. Now the second function that we are, the second logic that we are going to evaluate is the growth percentage or variance or growth percentage. Now how is this going to be computed? It's the same formula, current value minus required value divided by required value. So this would help us to compute the variance or the growth percentage. Now by looking at these two formulas, let's compute these two logics and apply it on our table level. So I'll just keep the formulas on top of this, and let me just bold so that it's easier for you to read and understand. Yeah. Okay. Now that we have the formulas created or explained, let's create these logics on my data set. So to do that, let me go to the orders table and create a new measure. So the first measure that we are going to create is the growth or the variance or growth. So how do I calculate the variance or the growth value? So as I mentioned, it is nothing but the current value minus required value. So how do I calculate it? So before that, for current value minus required value, so the required value is nothing but the specific value, right? So based on which value we are going to calculate it. So let's say that I would like to calculate the variance or the growth based on the year 2020. Okay, so I would like to calculate the growth for the particular year based on the year 2020. So in order to do that, let me first extract the 2020 year sales. Right? So first we need to calculate this expression, right, for the year 2020. So let me say, okay. So let us write the formula here. So for extracting the 2020 year sales value, how are we going to do that? So we'll have to extract it based on the function calculate again. So again I would say calculate of total sales, comma, for the year order date year is equals to 2020. Okay, so let me hit on apply and bring in the 2020, this one. Okay, so let me revalidate it. So for the year 2020, my total sales value is 6.09 million, and I could see that the same value has been created across this particular column as well. Alright, now we have the required value created. Now the next part is that we need to create a growth based on this particular 2020 sales value. So therefore let's create another measure and call this as variance or growth. And what is the formula to use here? So the formula is current value minus required value. So the current value is my total sales minus required value is 2020 sales. So this one, that's it. So I'll just hit on apply and let me bring in that formula here, value, that's it. So here you could see that what is the variance or the growth based on that particular year 2020. Okay, so if you want, you can also create or update this value. So for example, this value, so I've rounded off the growth values to 0 decimals so that it is perfect. Alright, now the next thing is we would like to also compute the growth percentage. So in order to calculate the growth percentage, it's again a similar formula, just that we need to divide it by the required value. So what I would do is, I will just call this as variance or growth percentage is equal to variance or growth, because it's already current value minus required value, right, divided by, and what is my required value, 2020 sales. So it is easier for me to reuse the expression easily within this calculation. Now let me bring in this value here, variance growth percentage, and this is already in percent. Now if I'd like to convert this into percentage, I can just select percent, and there you go. So this is how we can calculate the growth or the growth percentage by making use of this powerful DAX function called calculate in Power BI DAX. I hope this is helpful for you to understand the importance and how this can be utilized within our computation purpose. So in order to give a quick recap on this function, so calculate function is one of the important filter functions in Power BI DAX. So calculate function would help us to compute the input expression based on its filters. So it overrides the existing current filter context if we have filters in the calculate expression. So what is filter context? Filter context means at which level we are comparing the values, and it will compute at its own filter level. Okay, so the syntax to this particular calculate function is calculate of expression. So mainly the expression is a aggregated expression followed by some optional filter conditions, and these filter conditions are either Boolean expressions or some table expressions or of some filter modifying expressions. Right, now in today's example we have seen three different scenarios, where the first scenario where it is calculating the total sales value for a specific region, which is east value, and as you could see, it just gave me the total sales value for the east region, which is distributed evenly across all other regions as well. And why did this happen? Because as I mentioned, calculate function would always override the existing filter condition, filter context if we have filters in calculate. So therefore it has overridden the existing filter context on the visual with that new filter condition that we've used in the calculate expression. Alright, and the second scenario that we have also gone through is how do we calculate the specific 2020 sales, like in this example, because I would like to calculate the growth based on the year 2020. So in order to calculate the growth or the variance for a specific year, first we need to extract that particular year sales value. So therefore I've again used this powerful expression calculate to evaluate 2020 sales. So I've used, let me show you the formula. So I've used the expression as calculate of total sales. So I'm trying to calculate total sales. When am I going to calculate this total sales? For the particular year 2020. So this expression is nothing but, this is my table name orders, and order date is the column name, and dot here is nothing but the hierarchy or the date part. So within order date, I just wanted to filter it for the year 2020. Therefore, I've explicitly mentioned the date part or the hierarchical value by dot operator or dot expression. So dot year is equals to 2020. So therefore I am able to extract the sales value for that particular year 2020. So now that we had the 2020 sales value extracted, I was able to easily compute the growth and the growth percentage by using the formulas. Growth is equals to current value minus required value. So in this scenario, my current value is nothing but my total sales value, right? So this is my current value, and subtracted by the required value. Now what is our required value? 2020 sales. So this value should be subtracted by this value, and that is how we have created this logic here. So for that, I'll show you the formula what I've used. I just simply said total sales minus 2020 because this is my current value subtracted by required value, which is my 2020 sales. Similarly, for calculating the growth percentage, it's again the same formula, just that we need to divide it by the required value. So therefore what I have done is I've reused this expression by calling in the variance growth measure value divided by the required value is 2026, and that has given us the growth percentage spread across the different years. Alright, so that's it about the calculate function in Power BI DAX. I hope this session was helpful for you to understand how we can use this calculate expressions within our day-to-day reporting perspective. So let's continue on this topic in the next session with another important function, and let's dive into the advanced topics as we proceed along. So until then, have a nice weekend and happy learning. Thank you.